Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, today we come to the church and we hear, frankly, a short gospel. 8 verses only from the 13th chapter of Luke, beginning with the 10th verse. Very, though, important gospel, I think, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's the case. Today we also celebrate the higher martyr Clement, Bishop of Rome. He is from the 1st century, very important saint, and actually we may say a very important saint for the Russian Orthodox Church also, because when he was exiled from Rome to Kherson, where St. Vladimir was baptized. Very interesting life. Even the Troparion talks about the incredible miracle that happened around his commemoration on this day every year for hundreds and hundreds of years. But we're not going to take too much time for that because I realize that the sermon is already too long for most people anyway. So, but have a look in the Sunday reading. Either pick one up or read that online. His life is really interesting. So today's gospel, brothers and sisters, is one that when we read it, it's kind of pedestrian for us. You know, like even nobody got raised from the dead. What kind of miracle? Like some lady was slumped over, then Christ saved her, you know, and I mean made her so she stands straight up and down. And it's very easy for us to kind of be like, you know, what is that? Like, why is this wasting my time? Couldn't there be a better gospel on this Sunday? And I think it's very important for us to take a step back and realize that we don't come to church to be entertained, but to be educated. We don't come to church to be entertained, to be educated. That being said, the education has to be delivered in such a way that it's pleasing and acceptable and that you can remember those things. And so we have to be careful not to be like the leader of the synagogue who in this gospel sort of yelled at Christ and said, you know, you can't be doing such things on the Sabbath day, but more like the people, which we read about at the very last verse. They rejoiced in all the works that Christ did, and we must rejoice. And on one hand, we can kind of say, okay, well, that's enough. Like, there's a message there, and we can be done. But I think this is actually, I'm going to make an argument that this is one of the most important gospels that we hear in the entire year. One of the most important gospels that we hear in the entire year. Why? Because that woman who was bent over, she is just like us. Just like us. So when we think of a bent over woman, we think of somebody that kind of walks with a cane like this. No, she walked on 2 hands and 2 feet. She could not stand up at all. The only way she could move is by walking like a dog. Right? So she was completely and absolutely bent over. And for 18 years, she lived like this. Now the fathers are of one voice about what this signifies. She was so inclined. Even though she was a Jew, and Christ makes it clear in the gospel, this, you know, daughter of Abraham, clearly she was a Jew. She was so inclined to worldly things that her external appearance reflected directly her internal reality, that she was inclined to the earth. She was inclined to this life. She was obsessed and completely absorbed by this world. And now maybe you can see why this woman is somebody that we need to pay attention to. Because in no matter what time, no matter what period, no matter what age that you live in, you live as a Christian, but you also live in a society, in a given society. Whether that's the society that we have here in the West, whether it's the society of Eastern Europe, whether you're on the North Pole, doesn't matter. There's always a society. There's a social thing going on there. And it would be folly if we were to say, I'm not affected by society. Right? Well, maybe you're not. You're affected by pride. But the point is that we are affected by the society that's around us. Right? In any lake where you go swimming, you're going to swallow some of the water. I don't care how hard you try. Some of that water is going in you. And the same is true of the society in which we live. The Lord put us here. And that's a really important point that we can't overemphasize. The Lord put us here. Right? We are here in this time, in this place, because we can best save our souls in this time and this place. Right? We always have this temptation to hearken back to the great time of fill in the blank. You know, like World War II, when the society and the church were more in line, or Holy Russia, when this and that. That's not the way it works. It's good to, be a little romantic. I guess, things were better in the past. We'll try to make them better today. Okay, that's good. That's good. But you're put here for a reason. It's not because there was like an extra slot here and God didn't have any place to put you. It's because you best save your soul in this time and place. We have to accept that. Not spend all of our time grumbling about why am I not in some other time and place. Right? When we're grumbling, when we're worrying, when we're complaining, we're not doing anything except maybe kind of like praying to the devil. We're certainly not praying to God, and we're not helping ourselves. So we got to get that off of our plate and understand that we're here for a very specific reason, which is because this is the time and place that we have the best opportunity to save our souls. Opportunity, and we must work at it. The society in which we live has lots of problems. And that's exactly true of every society that's ever been on the face of the earth, right? Woe is me, things are so bad now. It wasn't so bad 100 years ago, 200 years ago. It was. It was just different stuff, right? Or maybe the struggles weren't as open, or whatever it is. For those people, it was just as difficult. They were put in that time and place so that they could struggle with those issues. But when we keep exalting our own difficulty with our society, it doesn't help anything. Well, yeah, it doesn't help our salvation. It might make us more proud. It might make us more whiny. It might, do things that are not going to help us with our salvation. So, away with that too. We're here in this time and place because this is the time when we can best save our souls. That being said, the call of Christians has always been to meet society where it is and raise it to a higher place. Right? We aren't to sort of say, well, the Lord put me here, I'm just going to participate 100% in this society. Every immoral and crazy thing that is being promoted by the society, I'm just going to buy into that and I'm going to be 100%. No, that's not what we're saying at all. We're here to make a difference. And sometimes we make that difference with our hands. Where we actually feed the poor and clothe those who don't have clothes and so on and so forth. We fulfill actively that Matthew 25 challenge. But a lot of times, it's by our example. It's by our example, where we need to be a kind of a light, right? That's on the hill, not in a proud way, but not to just descend and say, well, if society promotes it, therefore that must be God's will, and I will just buy into that. No, there is no time when Christians have ever lived in that way. Say that again. There is no time that Christians have ever lived in that way. Right? We have different sort of layers of priorities. Lydia always says, an Orthodox Christian should be a patriot. But sometimes a patriot is someone who's willing to disagree with something that's happening in the society. Right? A patriot is not someone who just never comments, never struggles, never whatever. And it's not about politics, actually. That's not the issue whatsoever. Whether it's morality, whether it's politics, whatever it is, the church is calling us to a higher place. And we need to strive for that place as an example for others, so they will strive for that place. And so society won't just keep going down, down, down in this death spiral of immorality and so on and so forth that we find ourselves in. But it's very important that we have our priorities straight. God's one. God is one. That's not really like, it's not debating. I'm not saying, well, maybe, think about it. No, that's it. We have to put the things of God first. If we want to attain the heavenly kingdom, we first got to at least get our priorities straight. 2, our neighbor. We are called to serve God and to serve our neighbor. Right? Christ said, I came to minister, not to be ministered unto. Right? I came to serve, not to be served. And if we are Christians, which we are, and if Christ is part of the word Christian, that's why we call ourselves Christian, because it has Christ in the name, then we need to serve. So God is one, neighbor's number 2. At most, I'm number 3. At most. Right? But it's totally, like many things in our society, it's completely upside down now. Right? I'm number 1. Right? Very rarely do you see somebody win the Super Bowl and say, I'm number 3. It's just, everything is I'm number 1, I'm number 1, I'm number 1. And that's how people live too. If it feels good to me, I'm going to do that. This is something we have got to fight against. We can't be like the woman in today's gospel. She's not given to us because this is the only time that we find somebody in the gospel like this, which is true, who's so bent over that they have to walk on all fours like an animal. This is true, but you see, that's not a mistake, because when we incline ourselves so much to the earth, to the world, to society, without keeping God first, then we begin to live like an animal. And our external appearance is often a reflection of our interior reality, right? For instance, when someone is baptized, we don't clothe them in a black garment. We clothe them in a white garment to show the purity of their soul, the new Christian who is coming to Christ, right? The clergy, on the other hand, have a certain particular uniform that they wear, because that expresses the outward reality of the inward reality outwardly, right? And soldiers have a uniform. So do police officers, and so on and so forth. It expresses what they are. And this woman was expressed, the reality of her soul was expressed in what she was. That she was so inclined to the earth that she began to walk even like an animal. And brothers and sisters, we have got to be careful that we do not follow her. We have got to decide that we are not going to strive for the things of the earth, but that we are going to strive for the things of the heavenly kingdom. That we will walk upright. Stand aright, stand with fear. This is how we live as Christians. That's from the Psalms. This is how we must strive. Now, the opposite also we have to be careful about. Just because something is valued in the world does not mean that we are therefore against it. Right? We're not here to just be against things. Right? We have to have a filter where we allow things in that are good for our souls and we keep things out that are bad. And we need to participate also that way. We need to participate in things of the world that are good and holy and that we can make a difference in and that we can help to bring people to a higher spiritual place, and not participate in those things where there's no good is ever going to come from that. And by even participating, we just sin. Right? We are called to be the rational sheep of Christ, not the irrational sheep. Right? We are called to be rational. We need to think. We need to use the thing between our ears that the Lord gave us for good. And hopefully our heart will also be inclined towards that good, so we don't even have to always think about it as we build our filter. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to return to my argument that this is one of the most important Gospels that we hear in the entire year, because it really calls us to reflection about how we are relating to the society in which we live. Right? We're not called to go away and never engage society. Some people will live like that. Monastics, they go to a specific place, and that's great. That's wonderful. We need that. We absolutely need that, but that's not for everybody. Most of us won't live that way. We're going to live in society, but we have to live in such a way that we don't be consumed by society, like this woman was, who we read about in today's gospel. So, brothers and sisters, let's not judge the miracle, that it wasn't great enough to entertain us, that no one was raised from the dead or something like this. But let's be educated by the lesson that the Holy Church is giving us today. Have your priorities straight. Do not incline yourself so much to the world that you begin to be like this woman. Interiorly first, right? We don't have a lot of people walking around on all fours, thank God. But that was the outward expression of her interior reality for 18 years. We can learn from her example. And if we do that, brothers and sisters, we can have great hope that we will follow the Lord into the heavenly kingdom. May the Lord grant this to all of us. Amen.